Here's the good news, everybody, that we've all been waiting for. Republicans and Democrats are coming together and they're trying to pull out an agreement on the fourth stimulus bill. And I'm really happy to see that President Biden is actually doing what it takes to send out the fourth stimulus check. So if you are on Social Security, SSI, ssdi, RRB, and VA beneficiaries, then continue watching this video, because you definitely don't want to miss out on this very important stimulus news. Now, with the unemployment claims rising, it seems like Congress may have to pass another stimulus relief package very soon. So from January to December of 2021, the national unemployment rate fell from 6.4 to 3.9%. That's actually pretty bad. It's been a tough year for workers, and the rate is 0.4% higher than the rate captured before the crisis back in January 2020, 2 years ago. So while the rates are down significantly across demographic groups, some people have seen this impact bigger than others. Labor participation did not increase much in 2021. Inflation and employment tend to work in opposite directions, meaning that by reducing inflation, there could be adverse impacts on workers who may struggle to find a job or one that pays them a decent wage. So more than 40 million workers, some of whom were fed up with their labor conditions, left their jobs as the market shifted in favor of workers. Now, Republican lawmakers believe that the people were now re-entering the workforce because of more generous unemployment benefits, being distributed by the federal government, that is. And when looking at the numbers from September, when the benefits ended in December, the participation rate only fell by 2.2%. In real numbers, that is an increase of 2.1 million, from 153 million in September to 155 million in December. This is less than the number of people who entered the labor force between January and August, when the benefits were still being distributed. It's also good to know that reinstating weekly boosted checks would definitely not impact the economy in a bad way. In fact, it would help out many people. So when asked about more stimulus checks, this is what Jen Psaki said, the White House press secretary. In mid-December, Ben Cardin and Senator Roger put together a $68 billion proposal. Jen Psaki said that Congress is still in constant conversations about a fourth bill. In mid-December, a small bipartisan group of Democrats and Republicans have quietly met for weeks, hoping to come up with a targeted relief package to meet the needs of small businesses, restaurants, gyms, and live entertainment venues. Funds would be directed directly to small businesses and Americans that are still feeling the impact of this crisis. It's great that lawmakers are continuing to push for more relief checks. In addition, Democrats continue to push hard to pass President Biden's Build Back Better bill. But this can't be done without the help of Republicans, not until the filibuster is ended. The only big issue is standing in the way is Joe Manchin. Manchin continues to blame his reluctance to pass the bill on different issues, like inflation, national deficit, and the question is who would receive more money if monthly child tax credit payments were to resume. Even though the expanded child tax credit payments, everybody, did lift millions of people out of poverty. Joe Manchin says he can't support it yet, but Chuck Schumer wants to change the filibuster rules, so it's definitely done. So if this is done, President Biden can get his job done and send out more stimulus checks very, very fast.
Good afternoon. Oh, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Please have a seat. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. It is my great pleasure to be here with Secretary Yellen and with all of you. We're looking forward to a robust and in-depth conversation. And Secretary Yellen, I want to thank you for inviting me to share this morning with you to have this very important discussion. And to everyone, there are many leaders in this room. It's a room full of leaders. I want to thank you for being here today and for joining us. Earlier this year, I welcomed Mother Viola Fletcher and her younger brother, Mr. Hughes Van Ellis, to my ceremonial office at the Executive Office Building. Mother Fletcher, as many of you know, is 107 years old, and her younger brother, Mr. Van Ellis, is 100 years old. And they both survived the Tulsa Race Massacre. Mother Fletcher and Mr. Van Ellis were just children when a white supremacist mob burned down black-owned homes and businesses and decimated the Greenwood district. But 100 years later, the memory of that tragedy, the smoke in the streets, the piles of bodies, was fresh in their minds, as was the memory of the thriving community that they lost. By their account, by every account, the Greenwood District was a very special place, and I think we all know was a very intentional place. It was not the product of whim or fancy or circumstance. It was a design, and intentional in that way. And it was designed and intended to be a community, a thriving community within a community. An economy in which Black people supported one another, lift one another up, and modeled excellence, in which Black people could determine their own future. Some of us refer to that as self-determination. To put equity firmly at the center of our economic policy. So I talk about that today because I believe we must draw from the lessons of Greenwood and Freedman's, of Sweet Auburn and Blaylock Bann. We must be intentional. Here's what I know to be true. America is a nation that is driven by the ambition and the aspirations of her people. But I also know that in America today, deep racial disparities continue to hold people back from achieving all they can. Today, the wealth gap persists. Today, the homeownership gap persists. Today, access to capital is unequal. As one example, Black entrepreneurs are 3 times more likely to report that a lack of access to capital negatively affects their profit margins. I believe that the actions we are taking and must take to address these disparities will define our nation's strength and economic strength in the 21st century. Our economy is growing faster than it has in decades. Unemployment is down to 4.2%, and nearly 6 million jobs have been added since January. As a nation, we cannot take this growth for granted, and we must make sure that everyone shares in this growth in order to sustain it. In a moment, the Secretary and I are going to sit down here and we're going to discuss some of the intentional actions that our administration is taking to lower costs for families and to remove barriers to success within all communities. As but one example, we are increasing